The squadron was called Jenkins Jerry Junkers, and that may have been a sign that we had on the bar. But Ralph Jenkins was one of the best COs that anybody could ever have.
We thought we could get over there and make a major contribution and take on the Luftwaffe and come out on top.
Your best friend is one that'll put his life on the line for you, and that's what we were doing day in and day out.
I was just lucky enough that I ended up in the 510th.
On the ground we lived like infantry, in the air we lived like kings.
We had such confidence. I didn't think anyone would shoot me down. We thought we were invincible.
We crossed the Atlantic on the cuttered White Star liner Mauritania, which was a luxury liner that was impressed into wartime duty.
The thing I remembered most was the bed bugs.
It's supposed to hold about 2,500 men, had about 7,000 men on there. And what a mess that was. Got a little bathroom, about 4 by 400 guys to use it. And the boat leaked on top of it. We didn't water that high.
Even though they have less than 250 total flying hours, they have a very high level of confidence. So we were pretty confident, maybe even cocky. We were ready.
But I was an old man compared to some of my pilots. You know, I was 23, 24 years old. First ace we had was 18 years old. The first real one that I think Williams was probably 19, 20. K-Kid was only 19.
I was 5/10th. That was in 43. I would have been 20 years old.
We had five P-47 groups, ours being one of them, and we gave General Patton very vigorous and close air support.
We had a number of very outstanding persons. And, of course, the granddaddy of them all had to be Ralph Jenkins.
And you just shot anything that moved. In fact, that was the instructions. Don't let anything move that wasn't shot at.
We had real good training. We were all amateurs, let's face it.
They issued us 45s, but there was no point in carrying a 45. I wasn't going to fight the German army with a 45 caliber. You couldn't hit anything with them anyhow, unless you threw it.
My firm opinion is that the P-47 Thunderbolt units, including the 405th, had a major, very, very dramatic contribution to the stopping of the German army in their counterattacks.
Oh, I liked the stability of the airplane. For one thing, it was a great bomber. You couldn't have found a better aircraft for punishment than that P-47.
One time I got hit pretty hard, shot off my whole right stabilizer, had a hole in the vertical fin, had a direct hit in my turbo supercharger, which was right behind the pilot seat, and a hole in the right wing that you could stand in.
The P-47 was the most forgiving, most comfortable, most powerful airplane I've ever flown, had the pleasure of flying.
If they bothered us, we would take them out. And our success ratio was 10-1. For every fighter that I lost to the Luftwaffe, we shot 10 of the Luftwaffe down.
Well, I had a tough time seeing over that nose when I landed in that tricycle. Yeah, and I put enough cushions underneath me so I could see over. Other than that, it was tough.
But our air superiority was supremacy. It was more than superiority, it was a supremacy.
I got hit in the bottom of a strafing pass and plowed through a forest. And I guess I was out for a while. My nose hit the gun sight. I had a pretty good smash in my nose, and I had sticks sticking through parts of my body.
And I hollered, in the mic, I said, Red 3 bailing out. I knew I didn't have time to do anything. Of course, I had my canopy, and I tried to push myself up, and bam, the slipstream knocked me back. Second time knocked me back, and here I'm going this way. And I pushed hard enough that time to zip.
He said, General Patton would like to talk to you, and I thought he was going to give me hell, frankly, for landing in the middle of his artillery. But he was really, I, of course, was a second lieutenant and scared to death. And, but he was real nice. He wondered what was going on, what I saw, and wanted to thank us for the job we were doing.
In the old days, a P-47 would be assigned to each pilot, and each pilot could put some nose art on there. It was a very individual type thing, and so I had very little hesitation to remember that I had a beautiful wife back in Tallahassee, Florida, and so it became the Tallahassee Lassie. And coincidentally, there was quite a popular tune then that went, "She's a slap-happy lassie from Tallahassee." So it was kind of a logical thing.
Raid Hot Mama, R-A-I-D. We going over there and we're going to do everything we could and shoot everything up and get this war over.
I really didn't have a name on it. Never had a name on the P-47.
Blood and guts.
First airplane that I had that they actually allowed me to name was called the Beast.
Squirt. The reason I did that, it was really after my wife, and I just called her Squirt.
If we had a real tough time and we ran out of booze, he could find some medicinal alcohol and a tank to put it in, and got a couple of 1-gallon GI cans of grapefruit juice. He'd pour that in there. We had no ice, but he'd stir that up and we'd have a party. And we called it Doc's Kickapoo Joy Juice. And that meant a lot.
We would read a lot. We would drink a lot.
Get somebody to throw in hand grenades in the bridge water up there, and the fish would float up the surface, and we'd catch them as they would drift by. We'd have enough fish for dinner. And that's the way we went fishing.
They also gave us 2 shots of whiskey after every mission, I think. And you could save those things, or you could drink them, and I never drank any. Because we had one fella that couldn't fly as well sober as he flew drunk.
I sweat a lot and I cried a lot. Fear is something that goes along with being a pilot. And I think you are afraid every time you come up until you taxi in and turn the engine off. How do you deal with it? The best you can.
You said, well, are you afraid? I guess I was, because there was a hole about, must have been a muskrat hole, maybe about that big around, and I tried to get in it. I burned my head, I had mud all over. Because that machine gun was still cutting the feet, and I'm underneath it, see. And I tried to, it had a real thick hedgerow, and I was pushing, trying to get through it. I'd already taken a chute unharnessed it. And I got through, and when I got through, there was a German sitting there with eyes about this big looking at me, squaring eye.
I knew what fear was, but I had great confidence in my mechanics. Those mechanics said, "Here's your airplane." I knew I had an airplane that was going to do the job, up to the point where the Germans hit it, you know.
You couldn't think about it, really. It didn't do any good to think about it. You knew I flew 85 missions over there, and I got hit on 55 of them.
You know, you say fear. Well, you aren't afraid to fly. I mean, of course, you got the world by the tail, and you think you're invincible. And it's like being in an automobile accident. You aren't afraid of the accident till it's over with. I mean, it all happens so quickly. But after I was debriefed and went back to my tent after the first one and had maybe a little breakdown or cried when the stress began to wear off. But after about a half hour, I guess, I began to wonder why they didn't get you.
Fear? We didn't have any fear because they couldn't hit us.
I'd do everything I could to make things comfortable for the pilots, even to the point where it looked like it was discriminatory. And my rationale on that was, hey, these are the guys who are going to die. These are the guys that are dying. These are the guys that are prisoners of war or evades.
I was a POW from the time they shot me down. All I'd say is John W. Drummond, 068-6831. By the way, I mentioned that. And I couldn't tell you my Social Security number right now, but I can tell you that 068-6831.
They wanted to fly. They wanted to get their missions in and do the job. We had tremendous patriotism evident among the fighter pilots in World War II.
Scott O'Grady was brought to meet the Marines that rescued him. And I was in the governor's box when he came up at the halftime. And I had that little 5-tent patch. And I showed it to him. He said, "Where did you get that?" And I said, "I was there when we designed it."
Today, there is probably not more than 15 or 20 men remaining alive who are truly eligible to wear it.
But it taught me a lot about this country. What young people did do to keep this country together. We didn't even have to be over that truck.
So if it hadn't been for us, we wouldn't be here. That's about the size of it.
It taught me to respect life for darn sure. We lost a lot of good people, and it just breaks your heart to think that they had to give up their lives for their country, but they had to.
Within the group, I had a very, very close friend named Robert Blackburn, who commanded the 509th Squadron and who was tragically killed over the Ruhr Valley in the waning days of World War II. And that was a very serious loss to me.
George Swanson was my best buddy, and that was a sad situation. He was shot down, and he was rescued and was coming back in an L5. They crashed in bad weather and killed both the pilot and my friend. And I've never gotten over that.
Clyde Knisley was probably my best friend. He had flown a tour out of Australia and had come in as I think he was a major when he came in. And he got hit one time. We were on a mission, and I was leading the thing, and he was flying my number 3 position in my flight, and there was a hole in the clouds. And he being the squadron commander, he said, "Let's go down and take a look." And that was a mistake.
I've been in the Senate of South Carolina for 35 years. And I think I've been able to bring a lot of people together. What I learned in prison camp. That you have to do some sacrifices sometime to win.
I like the Air Force real well, so I just decided to make it a career, and I spent 30 years at it. And I don't regret a day of it.
I became a career Air Force officer, and it was that decision that was shaped in a major way with the experience that I had with the 510th in World War II.
We were proud of the 510th. And when you're proud of something, you really go the extra mile. And old Jenkins, he was a masterful leader. And we knew him, we had confidence in him. And the 510th was just the 510th.
You get friends in this kind of a situation that you remember all your life, and you wouldn't trade it for anything. And I wouldn't trade the experiences I had with the 510th for anything.
There are all kind of problems that you face and things that you have to do. And it always was a comfort to me to be able to think back to all these men that I knew and realize what they had done. And it's influenced my life, I think, in everything that I've endeavored ever since World War II, to the good.
510th Squadron meets on an annual basis in a reunion, and there's a lot of love. I hate to use the term love as a male because you aren't supposed to do that, but the men of the 5/10 love each other. And you see it demonstrated a lot.
Why did they call it 5/10? We weren't too far away, but they knew what they were going to do, and they did it. And you go back and look at some of the real tough ones. See what Patton says about something. When they had the toughest one, they gave it to the 5/10. And the 5/10's still doing it.